I understand that most who watch videos on astrology are looking at it as a subject that is useful for making future predictions. And as I have said earlier, that making a prediction about the future is merely an extrapolation of the current trend. The idea of astrology should be beyond future prediction, because by the time you're through with the subject, you will realize how unnecessary that entire idea is. The sole purpose of why we want to study astrology is in order to take better decisions today. And in the process of doing that, we set ourselves in a position where we can realize the potential of our own horoscope to its fullest. My idea is to teach you the subject so that whenever it is that you find the need in order to take some decisions, because you are experiencing events which you feel are generally out of the realms of normal or ordinary, I'm hopeful that these videos will help you at a critical time in the future. One such case is the one that I would like to discuss today. I received a message from my friend which I'm sharing with you, and he received this message from an astrologer whom he visited and stays in the same building, is what I was informed. My friend is based out of West Bengal, Calcutta, and he and I are batchmates from SIBM Pune. And I hope you can read what is written here. Here, the individual has written gem therapy for whole life. And he has recommended in the 2 points, one is the red coral of Italian origin, and he has given the weight 11 to 13 rati, which I will teach you how to convert into carats later. And the other stone that is mentioned is that of the ruby. And here again he has given the weight 3.5 to 4.5 rati. Now, having received these recommendations from the astrologer to whom my friend visited, he asked me what I felt about these recommendations. In general, I have tried to train myself to avoid feeling anything and to focus on developing a framework for taking a decision. Here, what I see is that the individual has given red coral, which is basically the gemstone for Mars, and ruby, which is the gemstone for Sun. So, all that I'm focused on is where is Mars and where is Sun placed in this person's chart, and what roles do they structurally play. For this purpose, I will direct you to the chart of my friend, and we can see here his date of birth for the year 1987 and place of birth being Calcutta. You will notice that on setting these parameters, I get the first house where the ascendant is placed as Leo. Now, I will like to take you to the table that I had shared with you earlier. And we will see here that Leo, which is the fifth sign in the zodiac, and therefore the number 5 can be seen here, which is Leo, is actually ruled by Sun. And Sun, of course, teaches us many things. Pride. So here now I will add a few more points. Ego, self-esteem, but most importantly, the ability to set boundaries and to be a great administrator and administration. In other words, a strong sun, a well-placed sun, generally results in these characteristics in an individual. Now, this first lord, the lord of the first house, which is Sun, the question is, where is it placed? And here we will notice that the Sun is placed in the house of Cancer, so which is the 12th house. I have already taught you how to evaluate or calculate the houses. All you will do is you will assume the ascendant as the first house and then start counting counterclockwise. For example, here 5 is house number 1, 6 is house number 2, 7 house number 3, and so on. If you do this, you will realize that 4 is house number 12. And it is in house number 12 that the lord of the first house is placed. Now, first let us understand what is the first house. If you just have a look at the description here, you will see that the first house is called as the Tanubhav, which means the house of the self. In other words, we are talking about the individual himself. So, who is this individual? This individual is representing sun, or we could say that it is sun which is responsible for keeping this individual alive. So, wherever sun goes in this chart is where this person goes. Now, let us just see a few significations of the first house. Here you will see the word self, self implying the person himself or herself, the personality, that is what kind of a person he or she will be. So, having a Leo, a fire sign in the first house gives the person a go getter like personality. Leo, that is houses 1, 5, and 9, are also Kshatriya as per the Varna, which means these are your individuals who are out there to go get and achieve things with a leadership ability. This also describes the physical body, the appearance of the person, the temperament or the attitude of the person. It gives information on the overall health of the person, the character of the person, and talks about overall self awareness. In short, if we see what's written here, the first house tells us how an individual presents themselves to the world. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, it is the foundation of the entire horoscope. Now, ideally, what we want is that this first house, which is the most auspicious house, first house is the most auspicious house in any horoscope. We want the lord of the first house in general to go to other auspicious houses. This is the general want that we have from any chart. Now we can see that in this chart the lord of the first house has gone to the 12th house. So let us focus on what is the 12th house. When we scroll lower, you will see that the 12th house is called as the Vaibhav or the house of loss. This house talks about expense of all types, including expense for consumption, wasteful expenses, and even expenses in creating assets. Which means the individual who, the first lord, when they go in the 12th house, it gives the individual a predisposition to spend whatever they have. They could be spendthrifts, that is, poor spenders who spend on things of consumption. They could also be extremely wise and they could invest into things and hopefully good things. Or they could make wasteful expenses, that is, create assets which have no practical monetary value. Also, individuals whose first lord is in the 12th house have a predisposition to simply donate what they have. The 12th house talks about isolation, being alone. It talks about being sent far away from home. There are many other aspects of the 12th house, but it is reasonably safe to say that the 12th house is considered to be a dusthan or a very difficult or a negative house in general. This house, where the first house talks about our self esteem and ego, this talks about the loss of it. This talks about the eventual loss of everything that we own, and therefore, this is a highly spiritual house. But having a spiritual house, having your sign lord in a spiritual house, in a world where spirituality does not necessarily bring materialistic or tangible happiness, for all practical purposes, this house is considered to be a negative house. Now, what happens when a planet, that is an planet of an auspicious house, goes and resides in an inauspicious house? In general, such a planet is not capable of giving great results or favorable results as we want them. And then what happens if we strengthen such a planet using a gemstone? Then whatever results are to come from the 12th house, that is losses, isolation, far off travel, donation, wasteful spending, excessive sleeping, indulging in bed pleasures, also seeking liberation from difficult sources, all of these aspects of the 12th house will get exaggerated. Now, my question is, do you want it? Do you want to be a person who is whose primary focus is basically loss of ego, or whose primary focus is basically self development at all costs? In my view, individuals whose first house lord resides in the 12th house tend to lose touch of practicality. And for all practical purposes, this is simply not a favorable position. Therefore, in my view, the recommendation given, at least for Ruby, definitely is not good. And anyone, even if you're astrologer or you, consider wearing some gemstones, just remember that you do not want to wear gemstones of planets who are either sitting in the 3rd, 6th, 8th, or 12th house, or whose mool trikon signs are the owners of these houses. We can see that Sun is the owner of a very auspicious house, but it is physically placed in an inauspicious house, in a manner of loose speaking. Therefore, there is no point in strengthening such a planet based on the location where it is, because the 12th house represents healing. If this individual was pursuing the practice of healing others, such that he is a doctor or a counselor, then in that case it will add a lot of impetus to that profession. But I know that the person under question is not a healer, he is actually a business owner. Strengthening this house will only create losses. But what's far worse is that this is also the house of hospitalization and being alone. Strengthening a planet in this house could send you straight to the hospital where you could be alone for a very long time. Therefore, to conclude, I am very confident that if this chart were given to me, I would never recommend Sun. And also remember that because Sun is the sign lord, and that is the ascendant lord, that is the lord of the body, under no circumstances can such an individual donate Sun. Because donating the lord of your own body is is almost like donating your own life. Individuals who have who donate their ascendant lord generally go through patches of extreme illness. So therefore, the only remedy for as far as Sun is concerned is to do nothing at all. We don't have to always do something. Let's look at the second remedy. The second remedy is that of the Italian red coral. So when it comes to red coral, we are in the market. There are broadly three categories: the Chinese, the Italian, and the Japanese. The Chinese red coral is, of course, of the lowest quality, and it looks very ugly. It has a lot of marks and spots, and they're generally covered through artificial polishing, and consequently, they are extremely low cost. But in astrology, they say, Jaisa Ratan Vaisi Kismat. If you are buying if you are buying a gemstone, it is very important that it should be of a very high quality. The Italian is the in between as far as gemstone quality is concerned, and the slightly, and actually the significantly more superior, or the rarer uh, stone, that is the Japanese red coral, is obviously far more preferred. But not many can afford it. So the individual has recommended an Italian red coral. The information on the Italian is simply that is the source of origin which I have shared. And now let's have a look at where is this planet Mars placed, and what does it own. We know that Mars owns Aries, which is represented by number 1, which is the ninth house. And Mars also represents Scorpio, which is the fourth house. The ninth house is the Trikon, the fourth house is the Kendra. The lord of the Kendra and the Trikon is Mars for a Leo ascendant, which makes Mars a extremely auspicious, a Raj Yog Karak planet. It is so important that this Raj Yog Karak planet be auspiciously placed in this chart. So here we see that the lord of these great houses, that is the fourth house, that is the lord of happiness, and the ninth house, that is the lord of good luck, is residing in the house of loss. It is obviously not the most auspicious position for Mars. Further, it is not auspicious because this makes the individual a manglik, which, if one does not take care of before marriage, generally lays the foundation of a poor married life. In such close proximity to the Sun, we will see that the Mars is also combust, which could also create health related problems. So, logically, even though Mars is a Raj Yoga Karak planet for all Leo ascendants, the position of Mars in the 12th house will only invite loss of the 4th house, elements of the 4th house, which is mother, ancestral property, comforts, luxury, and similarly a loss of all elements in the ninth. Since Mars is in the house of loss, we do not want to strengthen this planet, and therefore there is no question of wearing the red coral. In other words, to summarize, if any planet you are considering wearing is either placed in the third, sixth, eighth, or 12th house, or its Mool Trikon sign owns it, with certain exceptions which I will discuss later. For example, in the case of Aries or Taurus or Libra, etc. Unless these are the general criteria, that is, they should not be placed in these difficult houses. Therefore, I would neither recommend Mars nor Sun. In fact, I would recommend no activity for Mars and Sun. Then the question is, what planet would I recommend? What gemstone would I recommend? So, first of all, let me assure you that almost 70% of all charts that I receive do not have a single planet which is worthy of recommendation for gemstone. It is very rare to find individuals who have more than one planet worthy of being for gemstones. Usually, such individuals have planets which are not only auspicious but also auspiciously placed. The combination is rare, and already the individuals, even before coming to an astrologer, are quite successful in at least one aspect of their life. In this chart, on closer view, it looks like that the only stone of worthy of recommendation could be that of Jupiter, and to some extent it could be of Mercury, and I will explain why. You see, Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, which is the fifth house in this chart, and as we can see that the fifth house is the house of children. It is the house of actually Purva Punya, which means it is the house of those things of it is the house which represents all the good that you have done in your past. It represents one of the Trikon houses. It shows everything that gives us a lot of joy, and it is capable of giving us a lot of name, fame, and success. It also gives us a lot of success in speculation and future prediction in general. The fifth house, for all practical purposes, is a very auspicious and a very positive house. And the lord of the fifth house in this case is Jupiter, which is present in the ninth house. And as we see that the ninth house is also a very positive house. The ninth house is the other Trikon, making it extremely auspicious. And when the fifth lord, that is the lord of a Trikon, is placed in a Trikon, that is, when the lord of an auspicious house is placed in an auspicious house, it gives the individual a Raj Yoga. So, based on the primary assessment, it is quite clear that in this chart, the individual is experiencing a Raj Yoga coming from Jupiter. And why Mercury? Because Mercury is representing house of wealth. We can see that the second house, that is the wealth house, is ruled by Virgo, and the 11th house, that is the house of growth, is ruled by Gemini. And Gemini and Virgo both have the sign lord as Mercury, and Mercury is present in that house, strengthening that house significantly. That is, this presence of Mercury grants this individual the potential to earn a lot of money. Therefore, it is possible to recommend Mercury, but since I'm so conservative in my approach, And I know that wealth houses in astrology are considered to be neutral houses unless and until an individual complains of shortage of money in the short term. And for that short duration only, I would recommend the Mercury. Always remember that while Mercury loves Sun, Sun is only neutral towards Mercury and Sun is the individual himself. But it should be noted that Sun considers Jupiter to be a strong friend, and so does Jupiter consider Sun to be a strong friend. And placed just 4 houses away, Jupiter and Sun are exceptionally friendly in this chart as well. So going with Jupiter is extremely safe. Going with Mercury, it is a possibility. Since Jupiter considers Mercury an enemy, it can never be worn together. That is, Jupiter gemstone can never be worn with the Mercury gemstone. So in this chart, based on the above, from what the astrologer, my friend, has the remedy received from him, gem therapy for whole life, my view would be to cancel out both 1 and 2 and simply replace it by the gemstone of Jupiter. And in case this individual has to really take the benefit of astrology, then even the gemstone of Jupiter comes only second. The most important is to worship and donate your time to Saturn. Saturn is a natural enemy of the Sun. Saturn is the lord of diseases in this chart. Saturn is in this chart an enemy of the Sun, and it is a lord of a bad house placed in a good house. That is, the 6th lord of diseases is placed in the 4th house of happiness. The 4th house Saturn can singularly erode all happiness from the individual's life if malefically placed. And in this case, it is malefically placed. You will note that Saturn is sitting alone in this chart, far away from all planets, in particularly the sign lord. This is an enemy Saturn, ruler of bad houses, placed in a good house from where generally one should expect great results, but the presence of Saturn could negatively impact the realization of those results. So the ultimate recommendation from my side would be to chant the Saturn Beej mantra 92,000 times. And if money allows, then consider wearing gold and gemstones of Jupiter. You will never be able to buy a high quality yellow sapphire. Don't be under the assumption that high quality yellow sapphire will be available from a jeweler next to you. A 5 carat high quality yellow sapphire could cost almost 30 lakhs. Your jeweler most likely would have never even seen such a stone. If you are planning to buy a Jupiter stone, go for a high quality yellow citrine. A high quality yellow citrine could cost anywhere between 2 to 500 rupees a carat. And wearing a 5 carat yellow citrine stone will just cost 1500 rupees. But since this needs to be worn on gold, the cost of gold could be quite high. Spending money is not for everyone. So therefore, in this chart, if I were to give a gem therapy for life, it would be for Jupiter, and the actual therapy for life would be to worship Saturn. I hope you have learned a few things in the process of analysis of this chart, and I will use various charts as subsequently in order to elaborate a few key points. I wish you all the best.